This is Capsule, and now we're going to talk about the United States troops that are being deployed to the Latin American region, particularly the Southern Caribbean. We already talked yesterday, right, that the United States was sending a fleet over there? Now, we have more information. Here on Hovenpan, they're talking about military personnel being sent to land in some Latin American countries to fight cartels, right? And here on CNN International, they're reporting that there will be 4,000 additional troops for the waters around Latin America as part of Trump's mission against the cartels, right? Let's try to understand this because, man, it's a lot, seriously. There's a whole amphibious landing group here. Look, the Iwo Jima amphibious group, which can carry out amphibious landings, right? They're deploying a group capable of carrying out amphibious landings and conducting operations in that region. There's a bunch more stuff here. Let's try to make sense of this whole story. This news was suggested by Instituto Socialista Chinês Tiredo, Avião Misterioso de Brasília, and several other people. Thanks to everyone who suggested news on our website, visonlibertaria.com, and thank you for watching our video. If you enjoy our content, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, okay? So look at this, alright? We already mentioned yesterday that the United States was sending a marine unit, a group of troops and ships, to the Southern Caribbean, right? That's the region where Venezuela is located, right? And remember, they're saying here that it's to fight drug cartels, but at the same time, Marco Rubio has already declared that Maduro is not the president of Venezuela. Maduro is the head of the Los Soles cartel, a major drug trafficking cartel in Venezuela, which even included Hugo Carvajal, who was one of the military officers supporting Maduro and who led this cartel. And you remember, he was arrested in Spain, deported to the United States, and signed a plea bargain agreement. He gave up a lot of information there in the US, okay? Including connections with Lula, right? So, look, are the United States going to go in on the ground to do this kind of thing? Are they going to invade Venezuela? I don't know. I think for now it's just a show of force, but we don't know what's going to happen. That there is this historical connection here in Latin America between the left and drug cartels, that's real. That's well known. This connection is known, right? And just like it happens in Venezuela, it happens here in Brazil too. Maybe in Brazil it's still a bit more disguised, but there is information that a lot of people are involved in this story, right? Let's look at the news here from Jovem first, which says the following. Check it out. The United States government, under a direct order from Trump, has started sending military troops to Latin America, right? Yeah, here it is. According to the White House, the decision was motivated by the need to confront criminal organizations that, besides supplying the illegal drug market in the United States, also finance transnational groups. In other words, you know that there's a group here in Brazil that's connected to Hezbollah, right? Over there in the tri-border area, in Foz do Iguaçu, Puerto Iguaçu, and Ciudad del Este. Yeah, there's a lot of influence from Lebanese and Syrians in that region, and they say there are direct connections with Hezbollah. Actually, it's worse than that, isn't it? You know that Hezbollah is getting beaten by Israel over in Lebanon, and many of those, Hezbollah terrorists have come to Brazil, right? There are plenty of Hezbollah terrorists here in Brazil because, of course, Lula welcomes them with open arms, right? And there's this cell in that region which mainly focuses on money laundering and financing these terrorist groups there. The United States is now taking action in this regard. Will they go after these organizations that finance transnational groups? They destabilize governments. Look at what the United States is saying. The Venezuelan government doesn't even exist nowadays. Maduro is not the president of Venezuela. Maduro is the head of the Los Soles cartel. Venezuela doesn't have a president at the moment because the Los Soles cartel destabilized the government and took it over. The Brazilian government is also pretty destabilized, right? We see a left-wing group that has taken over the Supreme Court, taken over the main part of the Brazilian legislature, and I don't know, could this also be related to drug cartels, right? That possibility exists, doesn't it? And of course, they destroy lives, right? It has destroyed many lives of the people from January 8th here in Brazil, and other people as well, obviously. Drugs themselves destroy many lives, right? Anyway, the operations involved incursions by land, sea, and air with armed forces units being deployed for support missions, intelligence, and cooperation with local authorities. So, what they're saying here is that the troops that will remain on land will go to countries that accept this. Which countries will those be? I don't know. I imagine that Central America, certainly El Salvador, would have no problem at all receiving these soldiers there, and from there they can carry out operations in a lot of places, right? Although the Pentagon has not released the official list of countries for security reasons, sources indicate that Mexico, Colombia, and Central American nations are priority destinations for receiving the troops. But there's something here. Look, an article on CNN that says most of them will be naval, will stay with the Navy, right? Here it is, look. The US military is deploying 4,000 additional troops to waters around Latin America. Yeah, as part of Trump's mission against the cartels, right? So here, it's 4,000 Marines and sailors who will remain in the waters of Latin America and the Caribbean, mainly in the Southern Caribbean, as part of an effort to combat drug cartels. Two defense officials told CNN a very large show of force that will give the president a wide range, right? A broad set of military options in case he wants to do something against the drug cartels. So what are they saying here? What I said before, it's a show of force. Look, we're putting our little boats right here next to you, Maduro. You get what's going on? Do you understand what's happening? I don't know if we're actually going to do anything, but we're going to put our little boats here, see? Depending on how things go, we can do a lot of things, right? We could set up a blockade, we could do an amphibious landing. Here, look, the deployment of the positioning of the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, the ARG, and the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit in the Southern Command, yeah, they're there in the region. In other words, this is a group ready for an amphibious assault. What does that mean? It's those little boats that stop on the coast and invade the country, you know, like they did in Normandy. Of course, it's just one group. The Normandy landing in World War II was much bigger. This would be a smaller operation, but still, just think about it, right? It's to fight against the Venezuelan army, which honestly doesn't really stand a chance, right? Again, I don't know if they're actually going to do this. Trump isn't saying he's going to invade Venezuela. He's putting the little ships there, setting things up to see how things play out from here, right? This isn't off the table, right? Yeah, so besides these two groups here, there will also be a nuclear-powered attack submarine, a Poseidon P-8 reconnaissance aircraft, several destroyers, and a cruiser, but a guided missile cruiser, right? Which are also being deployed there in the Southern Caribbean Sea. So there's a lot being deployed there. Again, for now, it's just a show of force, just to show Maduro, hey Maduro, look at the size of my dick. My dick is big, man. If I decide to hit you with it, you're going to get hurt by this shit. Now let's see what Maduro is going to do, right? Yeah, look, it also says here that on Friday, the United States announced the deployment of the Iwo Jima and the 22nd MEU and the other two ships, right? And there are also two others, the USS Fort Lauderdale and the USS San Antonio, but they didn't say where those ships were sent, right? These ships are also amphibious landing ships. Look, the USS Fort Lauderdale is an Antonio, a ship of the San Antonio class, which is specifically designed for amphibious landings, and the other one, the San Antonio, is exactly the same, right? Both are from the same class, right? So both were sent. It wasn't said that they went there, but they could be there as well. So we have several amphibious landing group ships in the region, right? Here, look, one of the officers emphasized that this military buildup for now is just a show of force. They're just trying to size up Maduro. Put your stick out, Maduro. Let's see who has the bigger one here, right? Yeah, but this also gives the commanders and the president a great deal of capability, a large number of options in case they want to take any action, right? The deployment of the Marine Expeditionary Force, however, has raised concerns among defense officials who worry that the Marines are not trained to conduct drug interdictions and raids against drug trafficking if that ends up being part of the defined mission, right? That's because it's not, guys. It's Maduro, damn it. It's obvious that these so-called drug cartels they're talking about here, in the end, it's Maduro, right? So that's it. The situation is heating up, man. The United States isn't playing around. And I think a little smackdown on Maduro would make Lula a lot calmer here in Brazil. I think so, huh? I think this is going to turn out well. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Besides liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel, consider becoming a sponsor with contributions starting at just $1.99 reais. Click the join button below to learn about the conditions and benefits of sponsoring the channel. For more information about our project, visit the websites shown on the screen.